easily goes back to some 5,000 years or more. A unique civilizational bond, naturally bound territory, common social institutions, and shared vision, values, and historical and spiritual experience have been responsible for an all-pervading and abiding consciousness of India as a geographical and cultural unit. Friends, the strongest intellectual support for Radha Rajan's thesis, to my mind, comes from Samuel P. Huntington of Clash of Civilizations fame. His other relatively less known work raises the question, and that is the title of the work, Who are we? Who are we? What is the substance of American national identity as contradistinguished from other people? His very clear, categorical, and unequivocal conclusion is that the Americans are essentially a religious people, that the core of American national identity is Anglo-Protestant culture, and that religion and nationalism go hand in hand. America is a nation with the soul of a church. The soul is defined by the common history, traditions, culture, heroes and villains, victories and defeats, enshrined in its mystic chords of memory. These are his words, Huntington's words. Huntington forcefully argues that America will cease to be itself, and its creed is likely to retain its salience if its creed is not likely to retain its salience if Americans abandon the Anglo-Protestant culture in which the nation was rooted. He believes that today American identity is faced with a serious crisis. It is threatened by the demographic imbalances resulting from the influx of non-white, non-Anglo-Protestant immigrants and by the global rise of militant Islam. In the context of worldwide resurgence of religion, he goes on to say, it should not be surprising if Americans again turn to religion to find their national identity and their national purpose. Unquote. Friends, my purpose in drawing attention to Huntington's seminal work and his idea about American national identity is to pose a similar question to ourselves. Who are we? What is India's national identity? If the logic of Huntington's argument is followed and applied to India, the thesis that emerges would perhaps be immediately frowned upon as diabolical Hindu chauvinism. All that is necessary is to substitute American by Indian and Anglo-Protestant or Protestantism by Hindu or Hinduism. Anyone who attempts it would be at once denounced by the pseudo-liberal intellectuals as being an anti-secular Hindu fundamentalist. While we need not necessarily agree with Huntington's thesis, one would wish that our intellectual discourse is raised to higher levels and an honest attempt is made also to understand the reasoning of those like Radha Rajan, who speak the language of Huntington in the Indian context. If the most powerful and advanced democracy in the world, supposedly committed to secularism, can unabashedly talk of Americans being essentially a religious people, of worldwide resurgence of religion, of American identity being threatened by demographic imbalances and global rise of militant Islam, and of Americans turning to religion to find their national identity, no alarm bells should ring anywhere if Indians also talk of threat from a demographic imbalances and global rise of militant Islam, and if they also try to rediscover their identity on the basis of the core ethos and culture by which India has been known for thousands of years. Indians, after all, have been more religious and more otherworldly and spiritually oriented people than their Western counterparts. And the demographic and militant Islamic threat to India is much more potent and present. The Hindu identity and majority feel threatened by the strong assertion of separatist identities, increase in their population ratios as a result of higher birth rate, migrations, etc. Threat to secularism comes from pseudo-liberal intellectuals and from politicians anxious to build their vote banks over religious or secular slogans. Conscious of the fact that the Hindu society is irretrievably fragmented and segmented, it suits the politicians to consolidate minority vote banks in their favor. The threat comes also from those fundamentalist setups and religious orders which have no faith in any secular principles. After all, every game has to be played by parties to the game accepting the rules of the game. I may swear by secularism, and I believe Hinduism swears by secularism. I may swear by secularism, but the question is whether you also accept the principles of secularism. There is no doubt that on its onward march from ancient times, our culture has been enriched by many influences from outside, but it has not lost its identity like the Ganges emerging from Gangotri and flowing through several states with many tributaries, rivers and rivulets, big and small, joining it on the way, and yet retaining its name and identity as Ganges.